You know that specific sound a pair of $1,200 Christian Louboutins makes on polished concrete? It isn't just a click. It's a declaration of war. It is a rhythmic, sharp clack, clack, clack that says, I have never had to worry about a mortgage in my life, and I am about to ruin yours. I was standing near the back of the sun-drenched atrium at Westfall Systems, holding a lukewarm cup of breakroom roast that tasted distinctly like battery acid and despair. Before we dive deeper into this disaster, let me know in the comments, what city or country are you watching this from? I always love seeing how far these corporate horror stories travel. Now, back to the atrium. I had been the director of corporate real estate for 19 years. That meant I knew exactly how much that polished concrete floor cost per square foot, $18.50 installed, to be precise. I knew the HVAC load required to keep this glass box from turning into a greenhouse in the California sun. And I knew that the lease on the coffee machine I was currently drinking from was expiring in 3 weeks. But apparently, none of that mattered anymore, because I was obsolete. Leela West, the founder's daughter, swept into the room like a hurricane wrapped in a Versace blazer. She possessed that specific, terrifying glow that only comes from a lifetime of organic cold-pressed juices and zero consequences. She was 32, armed with an MBA she probably bought, and had just been appointed CEO after her father, Old Man Westfall, decided to retire to a vineyard in Napa to find himself drink himself into a stupor away from shareholder meetings. Good morning, team, Leela chirped. Her voice had that jagged, manic positivity that makes HR managers break out in hives. She didn't use a microphone. She projected. Today marks a new era. Westfall 2.0. We are trimming the fat. We are pivoting. We are disrupting our own legacy. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my terrible coffee. Trimming the fat is just corporate speak for firing anyone who remembers how the servers actually work. Leela scanned the room. Her eyes weren't looking for people, they were looking for targets. When her gaze finally landed on me, she didn't blink. She smiled. It was a sharp, predatory grin that showed entirely too many teeth. Evelyn, she said. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the vending machines in the hallway and the nervous shuffling of feet. Step forward, please. I didn't move immediately. I adjusted my glasses. I smoothed the front of my navy blazer, bought at Macy's on sale 5 years ago. Sensible, durable, invisible. I walked to the front of the room, my sensible flats making absolutely no noise compared to her aggressive stilettos. Everyone, Leela gestured to me like I was a museum exhibit of an extinct species. This is what I'm talking about. The old guard. The stagnant bureaucracy. Evelyn here has been managing our facility since before TikTok existed. And frankly, we don't need managers anymore. We need visionaries. We need agility. She turned to me, dropping the smile entirely. The mask fell off. Evelyn, consider this your notice. Effective immediately. We're outsourcing real estate and facilities to a cloud-based firm in Austin. They're cheaper, faster, and frankly, younger. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Marcus, the company's general counsel, standing to Leela's right. Marcus was a decent lawyer, but he was weak. He looked at his shoes, refusing to meet my eyes. He knew this was a PR nightmare, a potential age discrimination suit wrapped in a wrongful termination bow. But he was too terrified of the new vision to speak up. Want me to leave now? I asked. My voice was steady. I don't scream. I negotiate. Right now, Leela said, checking her Apple Watch as if she had a brunch reservation to get to. Security will escort you. Leave your laptop. And please, Evelyn, don't make a scene. It's so analog. I nodded slowly, calmly. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't shout about my 19 years of loyalty or the time I came in at 3 a.m. because a pipe burst in the server room and I was the only one with the plumber's personal cell number. I simply reached into my oversized tote bag. Very well, I said. If I'm no longer the director of real estate, I suppose I shouldn't be holding on to these. I pulled out a heavy brass ring. It wasn't a sleek digital key card. It was a physical, jangling, heavy-duty keyring with about 15 old-school keys on it. Master keys. Skeleton keys. Keys that looked like they belonged to a dungeon master. I placed them gently on the sleek glass podium in front of Leela. Clink. The master set, I said softly. Campus access, warehouse, perimeter. The sub-basement archives and the executive suite manual override. Leela rolled her eyes, visibly bored. Cute. We use key cards, Evelyn. Keep your antiques as a souvenir. But Marcus, the lawyer, finally looked up. His eyes locked onto that brass ring. Specifically, he was looking at the small, red plastic tag attached to the largest key. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he'd been bleached. Leela. Marcus whispered. It was a strangled sound. Leela, those aren't just facility keys. Hush, Marcus, Leela snapped. She waved a hand at security. Get her out of here. 2 guards, boys I had hired myself, guys whose kids' names I knew, stepped forward, looking apologetic. Sorry, Miss Monroe, one mumbled. It's fine, David, I said. You're just doing your job. I turned back to Leela one last time. She was already looking at her phone, bored with her own power play. She had no idea what she had just done. She thought she was throwing out the trash. She didn't realize she was throwing out the load-bearing wall of the entire building. Good luck with the cloud-based management, I said. I hear the reception is terrible in the basement. I walked out. I didn't look back. But as the glass door slid shut behind me, I saw Marcus frantically grabbing the keyring, his hands shaking, bringing it close to his face to read the tag. I knew exactly what it said. I wrote it there myself 12 years ago. Asterisk property of Aspen Threshold Partners. Owner use only, asterisk. Leela had wanted a show. She wanted to prove she was the boss. Well, she certainly proved something. She proved that you should never fire the person who holds the keys until you know exactly whose locks they open. And she was about to find out that Westfall Systems didn't actually own the ground she was standing on. I did. To understand why Marcus looked like he was about to vomit a terrified lung onto the podium, you have to understand the history of Westfall's apathy. 19 years ago, when I started, the company was just a chaotic startup in a leased warehouse. Old man Westfall, Leela's father, Todd, was a genius engineer and a terrible businessman. He treated tax law like a suggestion and viewed paperwork as a personal insult. 7 years into my tenure, Westfall exploded. We were drowning in cash and needed to expand. Todd wanted to buy a massive campus in Silicon Valley, 3 buildings, a parking structure, and a warehouse. It was a $50 million acquisition. But Todd had a problem. He was personally leveraged to the hilt due to a messy divorce. Leela's mom took the yacht. Todd kept the debt. The banks weren't keen on lending Westfall the full amount for the real estate. I proposed a solution, a strategic holding entity. I created an LLC called Aspen Threshold Partners. It sounds corporate, vague, and boring, exactly the kind of name eyes slide right over. I told Todd that this entity would purchase the land, hold the liability, and lease it back to Westfall on a triple net basis. This would keep the mortgage off Westfall's balance sheet. Todd didn't even read the proposal. He just heard improved debt ratio, and I don't have to sign the mortgage. Brilliant, he had said, signing the authorization form while eating a bagel. Do it. Make it happen, Evelyn. Here is the detail that slipped through the cracks of history. Aspen Threshold Partners wasn't a subsidiary of Westfall. It was mine. I legally formed the LLC. I put up my own savings and a significant loan from my inheritance for the down payment. The bank approved the loan because Westfall signed a 20-year lease agreement that guaranteed the mortgage payments. Essentially, Westfall was paying my mortgage and I was building equity. Was it illegal? Absolutely not. It was fully disclosed in the stack of documents Todd signed. It was right there on page 42, Aspen Threshold Partners, a California limited liability company. Sole member, Evelyn Monroe, Todd just never read page 42. Neither did Marcus, who was a junior associate at the time and was more focused on hitting on the paralegals than reviewing title deeds. For 12 years, I played the part of the dutiful employee. I managed the buildings. I fixed the leaks. I negotiated the cleaning contracts. And every month, Westfall Systems wired a massive rent check to Aspen Threshold Partners. So, as I sat in my car in the parking lot, my parking lot, Watching the security guards patrol the perimeter, I pulled up the banking app for Aspen Threshold on my phone. The balance was healthy. Very healthy. Trim the fat, I whispered to myself, watching Leela's silhouette in the executive window on the 4th floor. Honey, you just cut the artery. I decided to head home to Marin County. My house is a quiet mid-century modern tucked in the hills, fully paid off. I was deadheading my roses, wearing gardening gloves that cost more than Leela's assistant made in a week when my phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I took a sip of iced tea and checked the screen. It was a notification from the Westville internal system. They hadn't cut off my email access yet, amateurs. Urgent. Access denied server room V. Urgent. Power failure executive wing. Urgent. Security badge system failure. I smiled. See, the smart building system that Westville was so proud of, the one that controlled the locks, the lights, and the climate, was registered to the building owner. Me. The account was linked to my corporate credit card, the one they had canceled immediately upon my termination. When they canceled my card, the autopay for the cloud-based building management system bounced. The vendor, a company called Escorted, has a very strict policy. Payment fails, service suspends. Immediately. I could picture the chaos unfolding perfectly. Leela trying to swipe her badge into the executive suite, only to get a sad red light. Brayden, her new chief of vibes, trying to get into the server room only to find the maglocks engaged. And the air conditioning. Oh, the air conditioning. I had programmed the system to default to energy-saving mode in the event of a payment disconnect. Energy-saving mode means the AC cuts off, the blinds retract to let in full sunlight, and the ambient temperature settles at a balmy 82 degrees to protect the environment. The glass atrium was about to become a very expensive terrarium, and the lizards inside were starting to sweat. I peeled off my gardening gloves and walked into my kitchen, the cool air of my home a stark contrast to the greenhouse effect I knew was currently baking the executive suite across town. I opened my laptop, my personal MacBook, not the Lenovo brick they made me leave behind, and logged into the Aspen Threshold portal. There was a new message in the inbox from Marcus, the general counsel. The subject line read, "Clarification on key handoff/urgent." The body of the email was frantic, even in text form. Evelyn, we need to talk. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding the ownership structure of the campus. The keys you left, they don't seem to work on the manual overrides. Also, the bank is asking questions about a change of control provision. Please call me back immediately. I closed the laptop with a satisfying click. Misunderstanding, I said aloud to the empty room. No, Marcus. It's a terrifyingly clear understanding. I decided to make a salad. A nice nikwaze with fresh tuna. I had all the time in the world. While I was enjoying my lunch and the scent of blooming jasmine drifting in from the patio, Leela was sitting in a boardroom that smelled of nervous sweat and overheating server racks. I wasn't there, obviously, but I know exactly what happened because the banker sitting across from her, a man named Jeffrey from JP Morgan, is an old friend of mine. We play bridge on Thursdays. Leela had called the meeting to secure a bridge loan for innovation. Basically, she wanted $20 million in liquid cash to rebrand the company, fire the remaining olds, and launch a marketing campaign featuring influencers who couldn't identify a semiconductor if they choked on one. Her plan was simple: use the Westville campus as collateral. The property value in Silicon Valley had skyrocketed over the last decade. The land alone was worth at least $80 million. Easy money, Jeffrey told me later, chuckling over a glass of Pinot Noir. So, picture this. Jeffrey adjusting his rimless spectacles, the room temperature creeping past 80 degrees because the AC had cut out 20 minutes prior. Leela is fanning herself with a glossy folder, trying to look unbothered. Miss Westville, you want to leverage the headquarters at 400 Tech Park Drive, Jeffrey said, looking at his iPad. Exactly, Leela chirped, her voice tight. It's our flagship. A symbol of our solidity. Jeffrey tapped his screen. He frowned. He tapped it again. Miss Westville, there seems to be a discrepancy. What discrepancy? Leela snapped. The building is right here. We're sitting in it. It's solid. Physically, yes, Jeffrey said slowly, using the tone one uses with a toddler holding a sharp object. But according to the title search we just ran, Westfall Systems doesn't own this building. Leela laughed, a sharp, incredulous bark. Don't be ridiculous. My father built this place. I have photos of him cutting the ribbon in 1999. He may have cut the ribbon, Jeffrey said, turning the iPad around to face her. But the deed is held by an entity called Aspen Threshold Partners. Leela blinked. The sweat on her forehead wasn't just from the heat anymore. Aspen? What? Aspen Threshold Partners, Jeffrey repeated. And according to the lien search, there is a strict no encumbrance clause. You cannot use this property as collateral because you are merely the tenant. Leela turned to Marcus, the lawyer, who was sweating profusely in the corner. He looked like he was trying to shrink into the drywall. Marcus, explain. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice cracking. Well, Leela, as I was trying to tell you earlier regarding the keys, the corporate structure established during the expansion phase utilized a third-party holding strategy to mitigate tax liability. In English, Marcus. Leela slammed her hand on the table. We rent the building, Leela, Marcus squeaked. We don't own it. We just rent it. From whom? Leela demanded. Who is Aspen Threshold? Is it a shell? Is it Dad? It's not your father, Jeffrey interjected, looking at the file again. The managing member is listed as, let me see. Evelyn Monroe. The silence that followed must have been exquisite. I would have paid actual money to see Leela's face, the realization hitting her like a wet fish. The woman she had publicly humiliated, the woman she had fired for being old guard and obsolete, was literally her landlord. Evelyn. Leela whispered. The facilities lady? Apparently, Jeffrey said, closing his briefcase. And since you cannot pledge assets you do not own, I'm afraid this loan application is denied. Furthermore, Miss Westfall, looking at your financials, your lease agreement seems to be up for renewal review due to a change of management trigger. Have you renegotiated those terms yet? Leela stared at him blankly. Because, Jeffrey continued, twisting the knife with professional politeness, if you don't secure a long-term lease extension within 30 days of the management change, the default rate kicks in. Looking at the current market value, that would triple your monthly rent. Jeffrey stood up, smoothing his suit. Call me when you have the paperwork sorted. But frankly, Miss Westfall, if I were you, I'd be less worried about rebranding and more worried about eviction. Back in Marin, I poured myself another glass of iced tea. I opened my iPad and checked the security cameras, which I still had access to because they were hardwired into the building's proprietary network, my network, not the company server. I saw Leela storming out of the conference room, screaming at Marcus. I saw Brayden running behind her, holding a portable battery-operated fan, trying to cool her down. I zoomed in on Marcus. He looked like a man who was mentally calculating his severance package, only to realize he probably wouldn't get one. Leela ordered a forensic deep dive. She was convinced I had embezzled the property, or tricked her father, or forged documents. She wanted a loophole. She wanted a clause that said, just kidding, Westfall actually owns it. She sent Marcus and 3 junior associates down to the sub-basement archives. The irony was palpable. They needed the physical brass keys I had left on the podium just to get into the room. The electronic badges didn't work on the archive door because, you guessed it, I had never bothered to wire that room for the new system. I liked the old heavy tumbler lock. It felt secure. I watched them on the security feed. Seriously, nobody ever looks up at the little black domes in the ceiling. Marcus was sweating through his dress shirt, sneezing from the dust. Find the original deed, he yelled at a terrified associate named Chloe. Find the incorporation papers for Aspen Threshold. They spent 6 hours down there. What they found was not fraud. What they found was a masterclass in meticulous administration. They found the original authorization of asset transfer signed by Todd Westfall in bold blue ink. They found the board resolution 2008 to 2004 approving the leaseback structure, signed by the entire board of directors. They found the email chains where I explicitly asked, asterisk, are you sure you want to structure it this way? Asterisk, and Todd replied, asterisk, yes, just get it done. I don't care about the details. Asterisk. But the piece de resistance was the infrastructure ownership rider. Chloe found it around 8 p.m. I saw her holding up a document with a yellow sticky note on it. She looked pale. She handed it to Marcus. I knew exactly which document that was. It was an agreement stating that all hardwired improvements made to the property, including the backup generators, the fiber optic cabling, the server cooling systems, and the security grid, became the sole property of the landlord. Aspen threshold, upon installation, in exchange for a reduced rental rate on the land. Basically, Westville had paid to install the equipment, but I owned it. Marcus read the document. He sat down heavily on a stack of banker's boxes. He put his head in his hands. She owns the cables, I could almost hear him whisper. She owns the literal wires in the walls. If Westville tried to move, they couldn't take the server infrastructure. They couldn't take the generators. They would have to rip the company out by the roots, leaving behind everything that made it function. Up in the executive suite, Leela was pacing. She called Marcus on speakerphone. Well, she demanded. Did you find the smoking gun? Can we sue her? Leela, Marcus said, his voice sounding tiny and defeated over the line. We can't sue her. Every single piece of paper is signed, notarized, and board approved. It's ironclad. There has to be a way out. Leela shrieked. Eminent domain. Hostile takeover. Something. There is one thing, Marcus said. The rider. The infrastructure rider. What about it? It says that technically, she owns the fiber optic lines running into the server room. And the cooling units. And the backup power. So, if she terminates the lease for violation, she can legally shut them off. She doesn't just own the building, Leela. She owns the company's nervous system. Leela went silent. Get her on the phone, Leela said, her voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Offer her a settlement. Give her 6 months severance. Make her go away. I don't think 6 months severance is going to cut it, Marcus said. Just do it. I was in my living room reading a book on the history of brutalist architecture when my cell phone rang. It was Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. Then I blocked his number. If they wanted to talk to the landlord, they could follow the procedure outlined in the lease. * written requests only, sent via certified mail. Allow 5 to 7 business days for response. *. I wasn't an employee anymore. I didn't have to answer the phone. I was a third-party vendor. And right now, this vendor was closed for the weekend. Leela, proving that she had learned absolutely nothing, decided that the problem wasn't her lack of ownership, but a lack of manpower. She hired a director of physical operations the next day. His name was Brad. Brad was a former logistics manager for a tech startup that delivered dog food via drone. He wore a puffer vest indoors and talked about optimizing the verticality. Brad lasted exactly 48 hours. His first mission was to get the AC back online. He called an HVAC repair company, not the one we had used for 15 years, but a disruptive app-based service. The technician arrived, looked at the massive industrial chillers on the roof, and asked for the access codes to the digital control panel. Brad didn't have the codes. Just hack it, Brad told the technician. Bypass the panel. The technician, who didn't want to go to jail, shook his head. Sir, this system is locked down by the proprietor. If I force it, it triggers a silent alarm and voids the warranty. Also, it might dump the coolant as a safety measure. Brad yelled at him. The technician left. The temperature in the server room climbed to 95 degrees. But the real fun? That started on Wednesday. I had made a small, anonymous phone call to the City Code Enforcement Division. Just a concerned citizen reporting a potential violation regarding the Zen pods Leela had installed in the lobby. I mentioned they might be blocking fire exits. I checked my watch. 10 a.m. Inspector Miller would be arriving right about now. And unlike Leela, Inspector Miller didn't care about synergy or vibes. He cared about door widths measured to the millimeter. And he was about to find out that the permits for those pods didn't exist. I sat back and took a sip of tea. The chess pieces were moving exactly where I wanted them. Leela thought she was fighting a battle for control, but she didn't realize she was already in checkmate. She just hadn't looked at the board yet. I know Inspector Miller. I've known him for 15 years. He's a man who views the world not through the lens of potential or synergy, but through the binary code of compliance and violation. He walked into the Westful lobby at 10 a.m. sharp, his clipboard held like a weapon. The lobby, usually a sleek expanse of glass and polished stone, was currently cluttered with Leela's Zen pods, wooden, hexagonal structures that looked like beehives designed by someone who had never seen a bee. Brad, the new director of physical operations, jogged over to intercept him. Brad was wearing a fleece vest and the frantic expression of a man who realizes his job description didn't cover municipal law. Whoa, my guy, Brad said, putting a hand up. What's the vibe here? We're just creating space for mental wellness. We're hacking the mindfulness gap. Miller didn't even slow down. He stopped in front of the largest pod, which was situated directly in front of the main fire exit doors. He pulled a laser measure from his belt, aimed it at the remaining gap between the pod and the wall, and shook his head. You're creating a fire trap, Miller grunted, his voice flat. Let me see your certificate of occupancy and your alteration permits for these structures. Brad stammered, looking around as if the permits might materialize out of the humid, stagnant air. The AC was still off, remember? Permits are in the cloud, man. Everything is digital. We're paperless. They need to be posted, Miller said, flipping a page on his clipboard. And looking at my file, the certificate of occupancy for this address is issued to Aspen Threshold Partners. Are you a representative of Aspen Threshold? No, Brad said, puffing out his chest slightly. I'm Westfall Systems. We own the place. Miller narrowed his eyes. Not according to the city. The CO is tied to the owner. If the owner didn't pull the permits for these pods, they are illegal. And since you are modifying a structure without the owner's consent. He reached into his bag and pulled out a sticker. A large, bright orange sticker. I'm citing the building. He slapped the sticker onto the glass doors of the main entrance. It read, Stop work/unsafe structure. I'm condemning the lobby, Miller announced, capping his pen. You have 24 hours to remove these obstructions or I seal the building. That means nobody comes in or out. Business closed. Brad turned the color of old milk. You can't close us down. We have investors coming tomorrow. We have a vision walkthrough. Tell it to the landlord, Miller said, tearing off a yellow carbon copy of the citation and shoving it into Brad's hand. The fine is $5,000 a day. It goes to the owner of record. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to receive it. Back in my garden, 40 miles away, my phone pinged. It was an automated email from the city, * notification of citation. 400, Tech Park Drive. Recipient, Aspen Threshold Partners, *. I smiled, pruning a dead leaf off a rose bush. A lease violation. A tenant causing code violations and fines to be levied against the landlord is a material breach of contract under Section 19C. I didn't want to evict them yet. That was too easy. I wanted them to marinate in the consequences. I walked into my home office, scanned the citation, and attached it to a new email. To * Leela Westfall CEO. CC * Legal Department. From * Aspen Threshold Partners. Subject * notice of lease violation and indemnification demand. * Miss Westfall, we are in receipt of a code violation regarding unauthorized construction in the lobby. You are hereby notified that you are in breach of your lease. You have 24 hours to cure this breach. Additionally, pursuant to the gross negligence clause, rent for the current month is now subject to a 15% penalty fee. Please remit payment of $45,000 immediately. Govern yourself accordingly. *. I heard later that Brad was fired that afternoon. Leela reportedly threw a stapler at him. She was running out of people to fire. Soon, she'd have to look in the mirror. Desperation has a distinct smell. It smells like unpaid invoices and voicemails left at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. By the end of the first week, Leela's Westfall 2.0 vision had collapsed into survival mode. The lobby was closed. The servers were throttling down because of the heat. The employees were revolting because the coffee machines, also leased in my name, had been repossessed by the vendor that morning. Leela tried to call me again. I watched my phone ring on the kitchen counter while I made a salad. Voicemail 1, Tuesday, 9:14 a.m. Asterisk Evelyn, this is Leela. Look, we need to resolve this paperwork mix-up. It's getting ridiculous. Call me back so we can sign whatever needs to be signed. Asterisk. Asterisk analysis asterisk annoyed. Superior. She still thinks this is a clerical error she can wave away. Voicemail 2, Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Asterisk Evelyn. Marcus tells me you're blocking his calls. That's very unprofessional. We are prepared to offer you a consulting fee to come in and smooth this over. $200 an hour. Let's get this done. Asterisk. Asterisk analysis asterisk transactional. She thinks she can buy me with pocket change. My consulting rate is $500 minimum. Voicemail 3, Thursday, 11:45 p.m. Asterisk Evelyn, it's Leela. The city is threatening to shut off the water because the bill is in the LLC's name and the auto-pay failed. Please. We have the Q3 board meeting on Monday. I can't have the water shut off. Just pick up. Asterisk. Asterisk analysis asterisk panic. Finally, we were getting somewhere. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sent a courier. I hired a process server to deliver a notice of rent adjustment and renewal terms. Since the front entrance was sealed by the city, the courier had to go to the loading dock. He handed the thick envelope to a security guard, who handed it to Leela. She opened it in the middle of the hallway, surrounded by sweating employees fanning themselves with file folders. The document outlined the terms for a lease renewal, since the previous terms were voided by my termination. Asterisk monthly rent asterisk $1.2 million, up from $400,000. Asterisk security deposit asterisk $5 million, cash up front. Asterisk lease term asterisk month-to-month only. Asterisk special condition asterisk the tenant acknowledges that all facility management decisions revert to the landlord's exclusive control. Leela reportedly screamed so loud it echoed in the elevator shafts. Then, the text messages started. Asterisk Leela, you can't do this. This is extortion, asterisk. Asterisk auto reply, this is an automated message. For leasing inquiries, please contact Aspen Threshold Partners during business hours, asterisk. Leela, my father is going to hear about this. The father card. I actually picked up my phone for that one. I typed out a manual reply. Asterisk me, your father signed the original agreement. He knows exactly who owns the building. Maybe you should ask him why he didn't tell you, asterisk. The truth was, Todd Westfall probably did forget. He was likely in Napa, drunk on an oaky Cabernet, oblivious to the fact that his daughter had fired his landlord. But the silence from Leela after that text was telling. She realized she was alone. Daddy couldn't fix this. Then came the heavy hitters. On Saturday morning, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. It wasn't Leela. It was Simon Vance, the chairman of the board of Westfall Systems. Simon is a serious man. He's 70, wears suits that cost more than my car, and doesn't suffer fools. He had been on the board when I set up the LLC. He knew. He had just been too busy counting his stock options to pay attention to the transition. He walked up to my porch. I was sitting there with my tea, enjoying the cool morning breeze. Evelyn, he said, nodding respectfully. Simon, I replied. Lovely day for a drive. You've made your point, he said. He didn't look angry. He looked impressed. Leela is inexperienced. She made a mistake. A mistake is a typo, Simon, I said, setting down my tea. Firing the person who holds the deed to your company is suicide. Agreed, Simon said. The board is meeting on Monday. Emergency session. We want you there. I don't work for Westfall, I reminded him. We know, Simon said. We want you there as the landlord. We need to discuss the terms of our surrender. He smiled, a tight, grim expression. I'll check my calendar. Please, Simon said. He placed a heavy cardstock invitation on the table. Leela is done. We all know that. Now, we just need to save the building. The Westfall boardroom is designed to intimidate. It has a 50-foot mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Silicon Valley haze, and chairs that look like they belong on the bridge of a starship. Usually, I stood at the back of this room, adjusting the thermostat or making sure the water pitchers were full. Today, I walked in and sat at the head of the table. Technically, the head of the table is reserved for the CEO. But when I walked in, wearing a white silk blouse and a blazer that said I own this, nobody stopped me. Leela was sitting to the right. She looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but stray strands were escaping. She looked small. The board was there. 12 men and women who controlled billions of dollars in assets. They were all looking at me. Simon Vance cleared his throat. "Thank you for joining us, Miss Monroe." "Miss Monroe is fine," I said. "Or you can address me as landlord. Whatever you prefer." Leela flinched. "Let's get to the point," one of the board members, a hedge fund guy named Rick, said. "The situation is untenable. You're holding the company hostage." "I'm enforcing a contract," I said calmly, sliding a folder across the mahogany surface. "Westfall Systems signed a master lease. That lease required a competent liaison. You fired her. You violated the terms. I am simply exercising my rights under the agreement." "We can fight this in court," Leela snapped. Her voice was brittle. "It's a conflict of interest. You were an employee while owning the vendor." "Fully disclosed," Marcus the lawyer spoke up. He sounded tired. "I checked the files again, Leela. Page 42. It was disclosed, signed, and ratified. We have no case. If we go to court, she evicts us during the proceedings. We'd be out of business in a month." Leela slumped back in her chair. "So," Simon said, looking at me, "what do you want, Evelyn? You want your job back?" I laughed. It was a genuine, bright laugh that echoed in the quiet room. "My job? You think I want to come back and manage the cleaning crews? You think I want to coordinate the holiday party? No, Simon. I don't want a job." I leaned forward. "I want equity." The room went dead silent. "You're in a default position," I explained. "You can't move. You can't secure financing because you have no collateral. You can't even turn on the AC without my permission. Westfall Systems is a tenant. And you are bad tenants. I am proposing a restructuring," I continued. "Aspen Threshold Partners will forgive the lease violations and restore the original rent rate. We will turn the servers back on. We will fix the code violations." "In exchange for what?" Rick asked. "In exchange for a seat on this board," I said. "And 5% stock in Westfall Systems." 5%. Leela shouted. "That's insane. That's millions of dollars." "It's cheaper than moving," I said coldly. "And it's cheaper than bankruptcy." I looked directly at Leela. "And one more condition. The CEO serves at the pleasure of the board. But the CEO also has to interface with the landlord. And frankly, I find the current CEO difficult to work with." Leela's eyes went wide. She looked at Simon. Simon didn't look back at her. He was looking at his hands. "If I am to invest my property into this company," I said, standing up, "I need a partner I can trust. Someone who reads the emails. Someone who understands that the foundation is just as important as the facade." "Are you suggesting we remove her?" Simon asked quietly. "I'm not suggesting anything," I said, picking up my purse. "I'm just the landlord. But I will tell you this, I don't sign leases with children." I walked to the door. "You have until 5 p.m. to decide. If not, the eviction notice gets filed tomorrow morning. I've already had a lovely chat with a competitor of yours who is looking for a turnkey campus with great server infrastructure." I paused, looking back at Leela. "And Leela? If you need to pack your things, I can lend you some boxes. I have plenty in the basement. But you'll need someone with a key to let you in." At 4:45 p.m., my phone rang. It was Simon. "It's done," he said. "The board has voted. We accept your terms. The stock transfer is being drafted, and Leela has tendered her resignation, effective immediately. We are appointing an interim CEO." "Excellent," I said. "I'll reactivate the building management system remotely. The AC should be back on within the hour." The next morning, I drove to the campus. I didn't park in the employee lot. I parked in the reserved spot right in front of the glass doors, the spot that used to belong to Leela. I walked into the lobby. The Zen pods were already being dismantled by a crew I had dispatched. The air was cool and crisp. The hum of the servers was a steady, reassuring vibration in the floor. As I walked toward the elevators, the doors opened. Leela walked out. She was carrying a single cardboard box. Just one. She looked tired. Her blazer was wrinkled. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a shell-shocked hollowness. She stopped when she saw me. We stood there for a moment, the woman who thought she was the future, and the woman she thought was the past. "You planned this," Leela said, her voice raspy. "From the beginning. You set us up." "I didn't plan anything, Leela," I said gently. "I just built a safety net for the one day you decided to cut the ropes." She shifted the box in her arms. "You know," she said, trying to summon one last bit of venom. "You're just a glorified landlord. You're boring. You're not a visionary." I smiled. It was the same smile I used when I negotiated a 30% reduction in waste disposal fees. "Leela," I said, stepping closer. "Visionaries come and go. They burn out. They get bored. They get fired." I pointed to the floor. "But the person who owns the ground? They stay. Boring is what pays the bills. Boring is what keeps the lights on. You wanted to be a star. I just wanted to be gravity." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key card. A new one. Black matte, gold lettering, Evelyn Monroe, Director. "Security will escort you out," I said. "David is waiting by the door. Try not to make a scene." It's so analog. Leela stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but she had nothing left. She walked past me, her heels clicking on the concrete, but the sound was different now. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was the sound of a retreat. I watched her go through the revolving doors. Then I swiped my card at the turnstile. Beep, access granted. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The doors closed, sealing me in the cool, quiet, efficient heart of the building I owned. "They say you should never burn bridges." I disagree. Sometimes you don't need to burn the bridge. You just need to remind everyone that you own the toll booth. And if they don't want to pay, well, I hope they like the heat.